Well, why don't we go into the nitty gritty here and just maybe to keep it simple, we can go line by line. And so let's start with the Leafs. Their line one.
So that's the tricky thing with the Leafs here is, I mean, we know who the top two lines are, but we don't necessarily know who's going to fill out that bottom six and which way they're going to do it. I mean, a lot of expectations. Nash is going to play. I mean, what are you going to do with that fourth line? Is Adam Brooks going to be a regular in the come playoff time? Engvall, we were talking with him beforehand. Is he going to be a regular? The Leafs have a huge decision to make down there. But the first line, Matthews, Marner, and I'm assuming, I don't know why it wouldn't be Hyman when he's back. I mean, they seem to have Montreal's number this year. I mean, Matthews put up some big numbers. And Danault, I'm assuming a concussion, he'll be back. So that should be good. But no, I don't know. I just think that as long as the Leafs don't get frustrated, because they have the tendency to do that. They're not getting goals, and the goalies are robbing them, like the Calgary series this year a couple times when Riddick, before he got his Leafs stand on his head, the Leafs will visibly get frustrated. So as long as they just, go with the flow, don't get frustrated if Carey stands on his head or if Allen stands on his head, whatever the case may be, and just stick to the game plan. I really like the Leafs this year. It's kind of funny. I want them to cycle more on Montreal's defense. It doesn't have to be off the rush. I think Montreal's defense has a hard time keeping up with the Leafs below the goal lines when they're cycling the puck, just the foot speed and all that stuff. So I'd like to see all four lines, for that matter, cycle a lot more, not just be the rush team that they're known for being. Because I think they have a huge advantage in Montreal if they can cycle on them. But the first line has to do it also.
Wouldn't you throw Nick Foligno on that line for that reason?
The reason I put Hyman on that line is Hyman and that line have just clicked. Like Hyman with those guys, he's a 20-goal scorer with that team, right? He does the things that Foligno does, maybe not the physicality part of it, but I like Foligno with that second line just because, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Nylander is not the greatest defensive player. So Johnny, he has some defensive life, he knows what to do defensively. So you chuck Foligno out there. I don't mind, but like those two can be intangible. Mixing a match up and down the lineup with those two. Galchenyuk, I don't think plays top six. So get that. Yeah, I don't think he plays, to tell you the truth, unless there's injuries.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not even sure if he plays at all. Which I don't know. It's funny how it's like the treatment that he's getting in Toronto is the same treatment that Mete's getting in Ottawa right now. It's like people are going nuts over them, and they're not looking at a place out there, but they're not really producing either. But they're getting treated as though they are.
Toronto, it's funny because when you watch Galchenyuk, he does do the right things. Like he does turn the puck over a little bit. I mean, that's every offensive player turns the puck over. I get a kick out of that narrative. Like they're creative. I mean, if they didn't turn the puck over, they wouldn't be beat. So that's whatever. But if the Maple Leafs are funny, like unless you're going to be skilled and make that top six, which I don't think Galchenyuk is going to, because they want a little bit of grit those top two lines. He doesn't offer anything to be a bottom six guy, in my opinion. Right? He's a big body, but he's not going to go out there and hit. He's not going to go out there and necessarily tight check and be good defensively. So unless he's playing with Matthews or Tavares, I don't see a fit him on those bottom two lines. So I think just numbers, he's not in the lineup. But injuries, I mean, anything can happen. But no, opening Thursday night, I don't see him in the starting lineup for the Leafs.
Yeah, I guess the Montreal media will have to park that narrative for at least tonight. Galchenyuk sinking the Habs in the playoffs. So,
you said that
sure they want
to. Game winner.
Yeah. No, he scratched. We've already called no. So it's Marner, Hyman, Matthews, and line one.
Yeah, Nylander, John Tavares, and Foligno would be line two, in my opinion. Line three is kind of.
That's a like incredible top six. I mean, how do you not love what Matthews and Marner have done this year?
Yeah,
I think it actually worked in their benefit to not be played together immediately, and now you're seeing the fruits of that. Like they're just disgusting together out there. And then Hyman, I mean, he's an incredible player. He does a lot of the dirty work for the two of them.
Yeah,
he wins a lot of battles down low. So that's going to be hard to deal with. But we counter with one of the best defensive and possession lines in the NHL with Danault, Tatar, and Gallagher, which is huge for us having them healthy again. That will be the key for us is that matchup, and at least making that Leafs top line as much of a non-factor as we possibly can in games.
And you want to make them work for it. Do you want anything to come easy to them? And all of a sudden they get on a heater, and next thing you know, here we go, the Leafs just scored now. But they don't want them to get on a heater, and all of a sudden, they have 6 or 7 points the first 2 games this year. You want them to earn every single chance that they get.
Yeah, it's so okay. So you have a top six that, quite frankly, we don't have the high-end talent on. So
yeah.
And we know our strengths versus our weakness on the Montreal side. But so we have Danault against Matthews.
Yep.
Who are you matching against the second line? Because I look at it two ways. You can either Nick Suzuki did it against Malkin, while Danault had Crosby in last year's playoffs. Now, if it is Suzuki and you have Toffoli with you, is it Armia that goes with them? Because if it's Evans, Lehkonen, and Byron, well, then you can actually. I'm getting into the Cole Caufield discussion of if he plays or not. Because I think if you have two lines that can play both sides, you need them to be you need them to play two-way hockey against those lines. Because I mean, that's legitimately, like we said, they're both elite lines. You can't just have someone who can score goals but not defend, because Tavares.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we don't want to just have, we don't want to be defending by staying in our defensive zone, trying to shut them down. We want to be able to, get some ozone time as well against these lines as well. And by doing that, you're defending. You're also giving your score. And I mean, to Gallagher are capable of that. It's just a matter of, is our second line with Suzuki capable of doing that? I mean, that's a tough decision to make. We know he's going to be handcuffed to Toffoli, and you want to see Caufield in the lineup, but Armia's had such a good, and people will lose their fucking shit. Habs fans like, oh, how do you play Armia over Caufield? But I mean, he makes the right decisions out there. He's, hard to beat defensively. And then, you do spend time in the ozone with him on the ice. But then you may not produce if it's him out there 5-on-5. Whereas if Caufield is out there in the ozone, you may. But will you get into the ozone with Caufield on that line? That's the thing, right?
I've watched enough games since Caufield's come, and I mean, it's exciting when he gets the puck on his stick. And I tweeted something the last few days. And again, you say Caufield out of lineup, you're just getting like ready to get grilled, because like, how dare you? But when he's on the ice, I've often found that he's hemmed in his own zone, whether it's his fault or not. It's like a nature of the beast, but he's in there. The last thing I think that Ducharme's going to want is have that risk, that type of risk, and for trade-off with reward if he's hemmed in versus Matthews or Tavares line. Because at the end of the day, that's a big, one goal can make the difference here, especially if Campbell's hot. So it's hard for me to figure out. And again, we're on the road to start, so I think we'll get. I suppose we'll get into the more matchup conversations on Toronto.
Yeah, because that's a good point. On the road first, because that's the whole thing I thought is like Riley Nash. I mean, we've all seen him play with the Bruins. Well, he's known for being a shutdown center also. So my whole thing was like, could the Leafs possibly try to match him up last change against the Suzuki line? Then you got to worry about Danault against Matthews. Then you get the Tavares against, whoever Montreal, Kotkaniemi, I guess, right? Yeah, right. So that's another thing. But to your Caufield point, I mean, worst case scenario, he doesn't play game one and they lose or whatnot or whatever. The kid's going to play in the series. I think especially for Montreal, like to win this series, they're going to have to score power play goals when they get their chances. So, I mean, taking that kid out would be, but like you said, you can't have him out there playing 11, 12 minutes. If he's having his own zone, he's a -1. That's tough. That's not.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. He's got to be in the lineup somewhere so you can sneak him out there on the power play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. It's going to be difficult, like in those first two road games to line match. Just thinking of it now, though, like our, newly formed third line or whatever you want to call it, with Evans at center, Lehkonen on one wing, and Byron on the other. Like, don't count those guys out defensively. They've shown and Byron continues to be a really underrated player in the league. When he's healthy, he play drives big time. He can finish in tight. And Evans' defensive play this year has been, a huge help for us. So that really could help us in the line matching as well. Like you said, if Sheldon Keefe is going to try and catch us off guard and have the JT line out against, a more, a better matchup for them, then Ducharme's probably going to want to try that to be the Evans line. But yeah.
There's so many scenarios to run through your head.
Oh, I mean, for us to try to work through it, imagine the
exactly.
side, Jesus Christ, and they have the offense and defense. Who are you putting out? I just think so. Just for the discussion point, we'll assume it's Suzuki. Actually, so we have Danault, Gallagher, Tatar. Matt, are you Suzuki, Toffoli, Armia? Is that who you're with, or do you have Caufield in there?
The way I wrote out this lineup, I'm Suzuki, Toffoli, Armia / Caufield. I think that's what it is. And it's just, we very well may see Armia in the road games and Caufield in the home games. That would actually make sense to me. And then in the road games, you can shelter Caufield somewhere. But yeah, I do, as lethal as the Leafs top six is, I think even though in terms of offensive production, the Habs top six can match them in terms of being able to keep them at bay. I mean, Matthews is going to score goals. JT is going to score goals, but I mean, you can say the same about our top six, right? I do think defensively they have the ability to really frustrate these Leafs forwards. I mean, they absolutely, for the most part, and if you look at the record, they dominated us in the regular season. But if you go game by game, they're all extremely close. And then in the last, 3 or 4 matchups, we're missing key players. So we didn't really get a true look at what the series could be these last few games, I don't think. But yeah, I think the best example of this matchup is the first game of the season when both teams were healthy. And it was an extremely close game, and it went back and forth constantly.
Until that 3-on-3 overtime.
Yeah.
Dano falling on a breakaway, and it just unraveled. But yeah. I mean, you're sorry, Tyler, if you want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. And I'm with you fully, Matt, on the fact that it's just been like, and we can dissect the Habs season, which has been just a goddamn fucking nightmare.
Roller coaster.
Of Jekyll and Hyde. We spend most of our time fighting our own fans, just as an example of how bad it is, right? Because one night you're in there and you're gutting it out and you're playing well, you're not shutting down, you're containing McDavid. And next night you're laying an egg to Ottawa, like an absolute egg. Clearly we've had, we've had our injuries. The schedule wasn't really an issue up until the last segment. Like everyone had the same schedule up until a certain point, so we can't use that. You have your injuries, you have the inconsistency, you have Price struggling. Like we had some annoying issues that should not have been there that we beat to death. But I think the injury part, like as the year went on, like you started watching these bodies come out of the lineup as soon as we clinched, it was insane. It was like, oh, here's 8 people out. Like here's our AHL team that's going to go in now and play McDavid. Like it's nice to finally just see some time for coaching to come in, because we had a coaching change, in case no one heard throughout the year, to like sit back and like work with the kids, have a couple of days off and like get ready. Like we haven't had that all year, which is like a nuts to think. But I just think the team, like everyone's kind of short-sighted. Like they remember the last few games, that's the team, that's how it's going to be. When in reality, like you got to remember the preseason predictions from some of these experts that were around. Like this team was supposed to be this deep powerhouse that had the scoring touch when needed. I mean, Toronto's came as advertised. I mean, they got better, or they got actually more gritty than I think people thought. But to like all of a sudden be like, Craig Button came out and said, "Oh, it's Leafs in 4." Like Montreal's lucky. Well, Button, you were the first person to say before the season started that Montreal was the powerhouse
in the division,
and you pissed off Leaf fans, and he would agitate them for like a few weeks, right, to keep it going. And all of a sudden now it's like the switch went off. I just think, I think it's closer to the start of the year of how that those games are going to go than the end. I mean, all things aside, like the team is inconsistent and shit at times, but I just think we're in for a much nastier ride than I think people think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and I think a lot to do with Montreal struggles too is like something might have got swept under the rug. And I think this week is going to help them immensely. Is, man, it's tough playing 4 games a week in the NHL. Like it's tough. If they would have had a week off and they would have played, let's say Sunday and then into the playoffs by Wednesday, I mean, I would have toughened the Leafs maybe in 5. 4 games a week for the Habs going down the stretch. I mean, that's brutal. That is absolutely brutal. So it's a good thing they got this week off. And to your point, get coaching for a whole week, systematically, everybody, and now you're just preparing for one team. You're not worried about, hey, we're doing the Leafs tonight. You got, Edmonton Thursday or whatever. Maybe you're focusing on one team.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, people will say we're making excuses and whatever. Like it's not even just that. We got to the point in the season where we kind of knew we were making the playoffs, and it was just like trying to figure out what is ailing us, and that's all I was trying to analyze. Right? But the schedule, like it was even before all the COVID shit. Montreal had a week break, like a month into the season, and then that alone made the latter half of the season really tight. Then the COVID stuff happens. And it was just unbelievable the schedule they had to put themselves through. So it made sense as to why they just were flat on a lot of nights. I mean,
and I'm sure Matt and Tyler knows this. Toronto knows that as well. Like the Leafs know what they got before. I think the last game we played, or the second last game we played, it was another back-to-back. It was another one of those player game and then play the Leafs right after, and the Leafs were waiting for a few days. Like that type of thing isn't going to happen in the playoffs. Like you're rested, you're ready to go. Like I don't think we're going to catch the team by surprise. We may catch, the half or the fan that's watching or some of the media, but I don't think that the players themselves are going to.
No, you're
They've
100%
played
right.
10 times.
Exactly.
No,
Like,
you're 100% right.
We played enough this year.
Everybody knew, like, we know Montreal is a much better team than last year, much better team. And I mean, you players don't care about what Habs did against Edmonton. All the Toronto players know is Montreal is a big defense score. They're rough. They're gritty. They have to be on their game when they play them. I don't think any team is looking at, oh, Montreal was shit, pretty much the last 2 months of the season, really never got back on track. I think that's farthest from the Leafs' mind. I mean, you're focused on a good team with some good players. And if Carey Price comes back and the best goalie in the world again, I don't think anybody's taking anybody for granted, especially in these playoffs.
Now, is that something the Leafs may have done a couple of years ago, and is why they've struggled?
This is my thing with the playoffs with the Leafs about choke and all that stuff. You want to call last year a choke job? I'm perfectly fine with that. They couldn't score. They got absolutely robbed. I have a hard time buying into the fact that it was a choke job that 20 and 21-year-old kids couldn't get the job done against the Boston Bruins. And both times Boston Bruins had home ice advantage. And one of those years, Boston went to the Cup Finals. So that whole narrative with that team choking, I just don't buy that when you lose to the Bruins in 2 7-game series. That's whatever, you know what I mean? One team has to lose. They're both good hockey teams. Last year, they couldn't score, and it's like it got in their head. Except for that 3-minute span where they scored 3 goals to tie it up in game 4 and then won it in overtime. They just couldn't get anything going offensively, and they couldn't put the puck in the net. And I think that really messed with them, their psyche a lot. But no, so I don't buy that whole choke job thing at all. Last year, say what you want, but if you're calling the same the Leafs choke against the Bruins, I mean, I don't think we're watching the Bruins play the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's a good hockey team.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fair. I think something that's kind of shot the expectations, or the Leafs in the foot, has been their expectations. Every year they come in and label themselves a cup contender. Maybe that's a good mentality to have. I mean, it pales in comparison to what the Leafs do, or what the Habs do every year, saying, "Oh, just make the playoffs and we'll see what happens," right? But I think that's maybe where it's, people think, "Oh, well, they were supposed to do it this year," and again they bow out in the first round. But yeah. I definitely don't think the Leafs are going to take us for granted, and a big reason for that is the leadership now on that Leafs roster. I mean, they got guys chasing cups that are vets that have been to the finals and haven't quite done it.